Welcome back to the Art and Skill of Coaching, where I teach you how to coach. So today I want to dive into a technique that I use frequently with my own coaching clients. It's very powerful for uncovering blind spots and unspoken conflicts and just expressing really deep emotions that sometimes get stuffed away in there. And it's called the empty chair technique. And you might hear that and say, Jess, this sounds a little like therapy. And that's because it is. One, if you've been tuning in for a while, thank you. You know my background's in therapy, and I pull a lot of things that are appropriate from therapy into my coaching to make it more effective and evidence-based. And this is one of those techniques that is totally appropriate and effective. This technique actually stems from Gestalt therapy, but as coaches, we can use it in a way that is safe, effective, and fully within our scope. I'm going to teach it to you today. And what it does is it's all about helping clients externalize any inner dialogue so that they can clarify what's going on and gain insight without pathologizing anything. So let's talk about why this technique is so powerful and helpful. Well, like I mentioned before, a lot of clients and just people in general have unfinished conversations with themselves, with others, or even parts of their own identity, or with events from their past. And these unspoken dynamics and unexpressed emotions can create internal tension. And that can show up in a variety of ways, anything from behavioral to emotional to mental. It could look like procrastination, avoidance, reactivity, sadness, irritability, anxiety, the list goes on. And traditional coaching usually only scratches the surface. It helps the client build awareness, but what the empty chair technique does is it lets the client experience and then actually interact with these internal voices and these internal emotions in real time. And the way that I can simply put this is it makes the invisible visible so that we can actually work through it. Now, what I will say is that this is a really good technique when appropriate. Like everything I teach on this podcast, you know your own personal scope. And it's important to know your limits, know your clients, and know their ability to be able to cope with whatever the topic is before you bring a tool like this in. So make sure that you're always practicing discernment and care. But again, by making the invisible visible, it's very helpful, especially when your clients are carrying unresolved inner dialogue. And if you're kind of confused about what that might look like and questioning if your client is or isn't, here's what it might look like. So it might look like stagnation in personal or professional settings, or it might look like repetition compulsion. They keep doing the same thing over and over again, wanting a different result. It's like a maladaptive form of trying to heal something. It might look like emotional reactivity to situations that seem unrelated. It could look like self-sabotage. It can look like confusion. So this isn't an exhaustive list, but this is a couple ways that this might be showing up. And without an opportunity to actually identify and then externalize and explore these voices, they remain stuck in cycles of rumination and avoidance. Just because it isn't verbalized doesn't mean it's not having an impact. So this technique can help. And like I said before, it's rooted in Gestalt therapy, but it's fully adaptable for coaching. So experiential research shows that just the act of identifying and externalizing a thought, so speaking them out loud, acting them out, this alone can increase self-awareness and help us start to tap into our creativity and our problem-solving skills to work through things. Neuroscience tells us that speaking and role-playing actually engages multiple parts of the brain, including areas responsible for reasoning, emotion, perspective taking, all of which is going to accelerate learning and decision-making. And externalizing our thoughts is also linked to cognitive reappraisal, which is a skill set that helps clients actually identify and then reinterpret thoughts, which can ultimately help them reduce unhelpful emotional responses. And I remember when I first saw this in action, this was over a decade ago. I attended a really beautiful CEU training, which is continuing education credits. So when you're a therapist, to keep your license active, you have to go to these classes to keep your skills up to date and keep learning new research. And one of the trainings I went to was totally out of my scope of practice, but I was really excited about it because they said it was helpful with trauma. And it was how to use improv, role-playing, and theater to help clients work through unresolved trauma, particularly with individuals that they don't have access to. Maybe that individual is still struggling actively with an addiction. Maybe that individual has passed. Maybe that individual is incarcerated, or maybe there's no contact due to safety reasons or toxicity. And I remember them walking us through these role plays, the empty chair being one of them, and how powerful it was to witness in real time. And we were just clinicians role playing and it was still powerful. And it was a technique I brought into my therapy, both individual and group, and saw how powerful it was. And I found ways to adapt it into my coaching. So here's a simple way that you can implement the empty chair technique stemming from Gestalt therapy in ways that are appropriate for coaching. And it's by asking a client when you notice that discord or that unspoken internal dialogue, conversation, emotion, it's by asking, hey, if this part of you could speak freely, what would it say? Right? Or, hey, if this person was right here, right now, what would you want to express to them? What would you want them to hear? What do you need to say? This is a safe, curated environment. They're not going to say anything back. Like, what would you want to get off your chest? And the goal here isn't to fix the part. It isn't to judge the part. It's to bring awareness to the dialogue, that unspoken conversation, that unexpressed emotion that are influencing that client heavily in their behavior and or their emotion. So let's talk about how to use it step by step. It's really simple for your client in a session. There's 4 steps, and then I'm going to give you an actual case example to show you how simple this can be. So step number 1 is if you're working with a person in person, you can place a literal chair in front of the client that's empty. And if you're working with clients virtually, you can have them do this in their own space, or you can kind of scoot off to the side so that they're looking at the camera at an empty space and you're out of sight. And then step 2 is you want to invite the client in to imagine the voice or the person or the event that they need to interact with. It could be an emotion like fear or inner self-dialogue or part that's self-critical. It could be a goal. It could be a person. It could be an event. It doesn't matter. And then step 3 is you want to ask the client to speak to that empty chair as if the voice, that part, that person, that situation was sitting there freely. There is nothing that's off limits to be said here. They can say whatever they need to say, however they need to say it. It's so liberating to watch when a client really gives into this activity. And then the 4th step is have them switch chairs and respond from that perspective. Respond from that voice, respond from the perspective of that person, respond from that event, respond from that part of their psyche. So, like I said, I was going to give you a case example, and this is a real one. One of my clients was stuck in making a career pivot. She really liked her job and it was paying well and she liked her team, but there was a better opportunity that was more in alignment with the season of life she was entering into. And I was coaching her, we were talking, I was taking notes, and one thing she said that really stuck out to me is, I feel like I'm letting everyone down if I leave this role. I'm just going to abandon them. If I leave, they are going to suffer and it's going to be my fault. So step 1 is we named that stuck place. And what that conversation did is it helped reveal the fear that was blocking her from the decision, from the career pivot that she had worked hard to position herself for, and that is actually more in alignment with her values and going to be more beneficial for the season she was entering. Then what we did was we externalized that voice. I invited her to imagine that fear sitting across from her in an empty chair, and invited her to speak to it and share things openly. And she said things like, I can't leave. They're going to think I'm selfish. They're going to think I'm an asshole. They're going to think I abandoned them. They're going to hate me. And she kept speaking openly and freely all these unspoken thoughts and internal dialogue. And what this did is help separate the fear from her identity, separate the fear from the facts, separate the fear from the reality, and that fear was just a part, not the entire conversation or decision. Then we had her switch chairs and she moved into that empty chair and got to speak as that fear. And from that perspective, she said, listen, I'm only trying to protect you, but I am keeping you stuck. I'm trying to make you think this is the only option, but you have options. I'm trying to guilt you into staying, but you have to make a decision that's best for you. And this small role play that only took about 5 to 10 minutes created immediate awareness. She realized that fear wasn't about others' opinions at all, but more so about her own expectations of herself in the workplace and the avoidance of discomfort, even if it was the best decision for her. And from there, she could make a clear, aligned decision that was best for her next career step. So you can see here in this role play that the empty chair and the chair switch wasn't just this stupid technique. It was really a way for that client to pause and identify and externalize and dialogue with the inner part that she was experiencing conflict with in a safe, curated environment. This allowed her to see that fearful voice was just a part, not the whole thing. and acknowledge its protective intention without letting it control her decisions, and give her the awareness and the permission to move forward in a more integrated, empowered way. And this technique is really going to strengthen your ability as a coach to spot the stories driving behavior. Because the moment the client speaks to the empty chair in a free environment without the anxiety of the reaction, those patterns, that internal dialogue, those stories, those narratives, those feelings become more obvious. So remember, that empty chair technique isn't just about fixing, pathologizing, or judging your client. It's about creating awareness and giving clients a safe space to hear, reflect, and respond to the parts of themselves, those events or those people in their lives that have been repressed, that have been stuck or hidden or unevaluated. And this alone can create space for understanding, healing, disruption, or compassion, all helpful in coaching. So I would encourage you, when appropriate and the next opportunity arises, to try this in your coaching with a client who feels stuck, conflicted, or is carrying any unspoken internal dialogue, and see how this can help. And if you want more advanced tools like this, they're practical, they're science-backed, and immediately available to be used in coaching sessions, make sure you check out the Art and Skill of Coaching. This is our advanced coaching certification. We actually only run 2 certifying classes a year, and the wait list for our next one is open right now. So definitely go ahead and check out the link. I'll throw it in the show notes. And if you found this episode helpful, please leave us a review and share it with another coach or on your socials. Your support really helps us share these tips and tools to help people live better, healthier, happier lives. And make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss another episode to help you master the art and skill of coaching.